crafting is an important part of any MMO, and for LOTRO, the crafting system is going to be getting some pretty big updates this year and beyond. So with this developer post, we have a preview of some ideas that they have for future crafting updates, and this does include some updates to go along with the expansion coming this fall. Again, I have to shout out the Standing Stone Games developers for creating posts like this and giving us a preview before any of these changes actually come to the game or even come to beta. It really helps us give an idea of where they are coming from, and of course gives us an opportunity to give feedback on what they are thinking. So this post started off with the general overview of the crafting system, and they do say that they overall like the crafting system. There are definitely elements of it that I like. I think I like the overall basic composition, but when you get into some of the details, that's where I personally start to not like LOTRO's crafting as much, but maybe some of the changes they are proposing will fix a lot of that, so we will get to that. And I actually say they do not want to take a do no harm style of approach to this update. This is actually a little bit concerning right off the bat, to be honest. I think the idea is they aren't going to be doing any very significant changes to the overall system as a whole, but to me, the way I end up interpreting something like this is that they are limiting themselves based on what is currently in game. And where the concern really comes in is this is what I feel like was the big problem with the LI system revamp. While I do think the current LI system is better than the previous implementation they had of it, I also feel like the revamp was a huge opportunity that was missed to rework the way they envision LIs from the ground up. So we have a lot of old elements from the old system that made their way into the new system that I personally don't think are necessarily good for the game or just don't make an exciting system overall. So that's why I am expressing some concern here, at least my initial reaction with this. But they do highlight there are frustrating points and that the system does have some suffering points from being developed over 16 years ago. So they start off with just a general overview of vocations, which is really what LOTRO's crafting is. It's based on your vocation. So these were designed with the factors of socialization, game economy, and unique way to highlight crafting. That's pretty much the whole point of crafting, at least to me, is the player interaction aspect, as well as just being able to create something. And of course, naturally with player interaction, there's socialization and game economy in it. So they did say as time wore on, yes, they definitely added new tiers and then complexity through guilds. I will point out before we get even too much into this, I'm going to be honest, I do not like crafting guilds in LOTRO, so I'm really excited to see what they have planned with that because, you know, just having crafting guilds themselves isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I just don't, I'm not a fan of them in game, to be honest, so we'll see what that brings. And then, yeah, every time like we get a new level, we get a new crafting tier. But yes, there has not been a focus on the system in a very long time. It seems like they've just done like some things with new crafting tiers sometimes. Other times it seems like they just kind of forgot about crafting or tossed it off to the side as an afterthought. And I think those are some of the reasons that crafting has not been exciting. For me, I haven't really enjoyed crafting. I will say, you know, beyond like level 50, or I should say like level 60, beyond Moria, crafting gets a lot less exciting to me. But then there's another dip like after level 100 where crafting gets like that. To me, level 100 plus is where crafting is at its worst, for me at least, and least exciting points. But anyway, we can continue on with this and with professions. So they're going to separate vocations into the professions. That's actually really exciting. So you can choose which crafting you want on your character and you're not limited by the 3 you get with the vocation. So I really do like that. We already knew this was going to happen, so that's why I'm not completely jumping up with excitement, but it is good to see that they are still thinking that they will do that. Now, how they are doing this, you can, yes, if you're new, you can choose any 3 professions. If you already have a vocation, then you keep the 3. I'm guessing you will be able to swap somehow. Hopefully there's no like cost with that, especially for people that have been locked in based on their vocation. And then it also looks like they want to allow players to expand their vocations by 1 more slot, meaning you could have 4 vocations. Before I even get to that, the idea of having 3 vocations that you can choose is actually really exciting as somebody who likes to gather. Hopefully there are some gathering relevant notes here because I do think gathering could be improved. But yeah, with the gathering, you could actually choose forester, prospector, and oddly enough, scholar is definitely a gathering profession. I know farmer is, but that's perhaps a little bit different since you don't do as much in the open world with farming. But you do all the forester, prospector, and scholar gathering in the open world. So having a character that could do all 3 of those, you know, it'd just be fun to me, and that's probably what I would do on a lot of my leveling alts. But anyway, with the 4th slot, they don't quite have details on how you will get this 4th slot. I think it could be a great benefit if you are a VIP to give you access to the 4th slot. That would increase the value of being a subscriber to the game a little bit. Of course, me as a subscriber, that's like what I would want to be able to unlock this easily. I don't think it would be the worst thing if they monetize it in the form of subscriber and maybe like a one-time purchase from the LOTRO store. I'm not 100% sure on my thoughts on that, but that's at least my initial reactions. Again, I'd be curious what people think about that and monetizing like one more crafting vocation that you can get, because I'm assuming that's what they are going to do with like not having details on how it's acquired. It seems pretty straightforward that it would be monetized in some aspect. And now for the resource tiers. So there are what, like 13 or 14? I forget how many at this point, but there are a lot of crafting tiers at this point. So update 35. So for update 35, the last date that I did see from Standing Stone Games as a target would actually be March 21st, which would be 1 week from today when this post came up and I'm recording it. So with update 35, they're going to be introducing minor updates. So we'll only get minor updates to start. I believe, again, they'll be doing these updates throughout the year, it sounds like. And again, with the expansion in the fall, probably some more major changes we'll see with that new tier. But anyway, we'll get some new crafting recipes, which is exciting. I'd be curious how you acquire those, because that is of course important, but they'll also be adding new items needed to craft the new recipes. One thing that I have found with crafting is rare ingredients, at least the way they're implemented in LOTRO, aren't always the most exciting thing. So I have slight concern if it's another like sunstone shard type thing for the Gundabad crafting tier, but we don't have the details on that, so I will leave that there. So this is going to be the start of changes that will realign crafting tiers. So I'm guessing align just maybe makes them consistent and like more within their vision of what they want crafting to be in the future. That is at least the way I'm initially interpreting realign here, but they're not going to do all the earlier tiers yet, and that will probably have to... So we'll continue to increase, yes, resource tiers for future level updates. We could have expected that. And then they will, yes, this is continue creating more recipes for crafting vocations over time, rather than only at level increases. I think this is a good thing, like when you're in an update cycle or a level cap expansion cycle, to continue to add updates throughout that expansion, keep crafting exciting and relevant as things move forward. So as long as they actually keep up with this, keeping up with adding recipes, I think that will be a great thing for crafting in LOTRO moving forward. But we are on the next section, which is on crafting guilds. So with crafting guilds, they do say that there are, yes, 3 omissions for professions that don't have a guild: forester, prospector, and farmer, the traditional gathering ones that don't really have much else for crafting. And it sounds like they want to bring guilds to those gathering professions. You know, it's not necessarily a bad thing with crafting guilds again, but thinking what we have with crafting guilds in game right now, that brings more concern than excitement for me, to be honest. But it does look like they're addressing some of the issues with crafting guilds, and that they know that the length of time needed in order to increase standing with guilds is prohibitive. That is entirely true. I think that's in lack of catch-up mechanics. Like, they had this fake catch-up mechanic with Minas Morgul when they actually did some crafting updates at level 130 cap. It was something on the surface that appeared to be a catch-up mechanic, but was really just a way to get you to the new tier if you were already maxed from the previous tier, so it didn't really do anything, which kind of sucked, even though it like gave the appearance of actually being a catch-up mechanic. That was a huge letdown, so just venting a little bit on that. Anyway, they're going to... yes, I guess address that. There's not much other information here. They just want it to be like, make the enrollment in the guild a more active experience. And you all will actually see there's already enough consternation about what was deleted. So there was something that was deleted here, and they're not going to discuss it further in this thread. If you're curious what that is, actually in my little preview, I didn't go into full details with this, but just to look over it, I saw that line. I was like, what was deleted? You know, natural curiosity. I can't help myself, to be honest. And I believe this person, I don't know if this is the first one, but here's the quote of what was originally there. So they want to address the, make enrollment in the guild more active experience, but this part is what looks like was deleted. You will be able to maintain your membership and access by continued activity, or it will decay slowly over time. And I immediately see why there was a lot of, I'm guessing, pushback against this, and why they have removed that and adapted from what there previously was, responded to feedback essentially very quickly, it sounds like. And the reason is because that just does not sound like a good system for an MMO, where people take breaks, they have periods of inactivity, and punishing you for not playing or not being active and taking away something you had, like a membership and like tiers or whatever with the guild system, over time just does not sound fun. And I again can see why people would have pushed back from that. But I do want to take the time to appreciate, again, Standing Stone Games and Orion, the developer here who posted that. I actually think this is a great thing that they have made this preview before an update like this came live, where you did lose guild status over time. They gave this preview of something they were thinking about implementing, and they actually had time to respond to player feedback, and it sounds like already responding and taking action based on the player feedback. So that is great to see. It actually reminds me of when there was a proposed Embers change. I'm thinking it was early 2022, if I remember my dates correctly. There was this Embers change that I believe was in patch notes, or it was like a few days or a week before the release of the update. They had all these changes that were coming to the Ember system, how you acquired Embers, spending them. There was also changes to the moats along with that. And there was a ton of negative player feedback. I believe the main reasons, if I remember correctly, is the changes to the Ember system weren't necessarily bad, but it looked like something that was going to negatively affect players without really giving them anything to make up for what would have been lost in this update. And the big problem with that, and the whole way that scenario went down, is that this was like in the patch notes and that was being implemented into the game. There was no preview of it ahead of time to give us an idea, okay, this is something they're actually thinking about, even updating the Embers and moat system. And it just led to an overall negative experience for players and the community as a whole. While there was so much negativity and pushback from the players that they ultimately didn't implement the changes, it's a whole situation that could have been avoided, and there was probably a lot of work already done, like if it was in the patch notes, a lot of work already done in getting that implemented to the game that could have been avoided if they just gave a preview before all the work was done and gotten that player feedback ahead of time. And it's also kind of similar to like way back in the old LI system when they made changes to scrolls of empowerment and added like max tier limits to a bunch of ways players used to get scrolls. So those are just a couple actually easy examples off the top of my head where changes like this, we're having a post like this for them and having this response to community feedback for those could have improved the experience with those in the past. And basically, I just appreciate that we're actually having that and having an improvement from the past. Anyway, for crafting guilds, maybe I should dive into a little bit more why I don't like them. One, they are grindy. I think the time part of them, and it's also recipes for crafting guilds aren't necessarily the most exciting. At low levels and low tiers, you can craft like full teal sets fairly easily if you have the personal or crafting ingredient, universal crafting ingredient packs, that's what they are called, which with the housing items that you can have in kin houses and the such, it's actually relatively easy to get those and craft yourself. They're going to be bound to account the pieces you craft with those, but you can craft yourself something fairly easily. That said, if you want to craft something with your crafting guild for other players, there are annoying cooldowns and it's not the most fun experience to me. And there's just not a lot of exciting stuff for higher crafting tiers with the crafting guilds. And if I remember correctly, there were time periods in LOTRO. I honestly don't know with Goondabat if this is the case right now or what level caps exactly this would happen, because again, inconsistencies with when they would implement certain things with crafting the past few years. But having character bound things crafted, especially things that feel required. I know this was a big thing with legendary item crafted relics, I believe is what they would have been called back then. That was one of the most annoying things about crafting to me in the past, having completely bound things that you cannot trade. I think one of the big points of crafting in an MMO or any game that has multiplayer for that matter is being able to trade what you craft with other players. I think having things limited by not being able to trade them, so being bound to character or even bound to account, really limits the potential of crafting and just, to me, makes it not nearly as fun as it could be. I also think this really helps for people that don't want to craft. They can use whatever resources they acquire, they can trade them to players that do like to craft, and they can get whatever items out of crafting that they want without actually having to bother at all with crafting. And just conversely, if you do like to craft, then you can craft stuff for other players using their resources and maybe don't even have to do that much work for yourself, but you still get the excitement out of crafting and creating something for somebody else. So anyway, I know that got a little bit off topic, but I thought it was a really important thing just to make sure I stated in this video with crafting, because I feel like it's a big thing in LOTRO that hasn't always been there in the past. But anyway, we can get moving on here to the crafting relevance. Hey, maybe this is pretty relevant to what I was just talking about. But this is more about the gear and how powerful it is for your character, it seems like, not necessarily being bound to account versus just being BOE and completely tradable, as I personally think basically anything crafted should be. But anyway, they're going to work towards making, yes, crafting gear more relevant in the next level band. I'm guessing that's going to be level 150 with the new expansion in the fall that they're referring to. But then they're going to start making relevant crafted gear back through the lower level bands. So I'm guessing they are adding some recipes for update 35, so maybe we will see some of that stuff for level 140. But yeah, this could be more with the expansion. And then yeah, working backwards will take longer than this year. But let's see, they want to make crafting more useful. So they're going to, yes, that will be the expansion later this year. So it sounds like for general power level of crafted gear, I don't necessarily think there should just be one power level, but let's see what they have. They want it to be slightly ahead of quest gear. I think that's a great thing. That's a great starting point for the low-end crafting stuff. A little bit ahead of quest gear, that is good. So that will lead, they are thinking, to 2 behavior. So one is you get, actually optional rewards through quests specific to crafters. I think that could be neat. Instead of gear, you could select crafting stuff as a quest reward. I think that could be exciting. I kind of like that initially. But then also make crafting a unique stepping stone to assist in instances, as it definitely should be. I know with Gundabad crafting at the very launch of the expansion, you could craft some useful things, but they weren't necessarily that impressive, and I think you need a reputation to barter for them, which wasn't necessarily a problem, but it was almost more of an annoying thing to actually get your gear crafted than a fun, exciting thing, to me at least. But let's see, the major quest lines and crafted gear those should be able to prepare you for instances. I definitely agree with that. I also don't see a problem with some of the higher end crafted pieces being competitive with low end instance and even raid gear, but we'll see if they have more details on that, of course, when it becomes implemented, starting with the expansion. So let's see, new gear and armor and instances will have, measure of crafting included to ensure there's always something for crafters to look forward to. I think that's a great thing. I don't know if they're talking about unique drops and instances for crafting material basically, or now you can actually disenchant a lot of instance gear into resources. But these will just assist in stepping stones to move into raids and so on. Again, I think that's a good thing. But it looks like the widgets, maybe that's the initial name they're calling it, but extra items needed to craft these latest items, those will be scattered throughout the game. Not only in instance or raids. I think that is a great thing, and this is exactly why. So crafters are not forced to engage with systems they might not want to play. So you can still craft stuff even if you don't raid. That is, again, one of the things that I think would be great. And also, I don't think I talked about this earlier with BOE and having things tradable, but I think everything that is a crafting resource, so these extra items or widgets, I really hope they are tradable. They're BOE, so there is some sort of market for them. You can trade them, sell them, buy them, etc. So it also looks like with the crafting, you'll be able to directly assist fellow players, by making items that can help them in those endeavors. Okay, yeah. Yes. This almost, to me, is yes, that does mean things are BOE because you can make items for assisting your fellow players and kinmates, which is great, I think. Looks like we are getting near the end here, and we have crafting and housing. So they're looking at ways to enhance crafting influences and how crafting influences and is influenced by the housing system. So they want some relations there, it sounds like. Still working on details and just have ideas. So this actually reminds me a little bit of the garrison from World of Warcraft, Warlords of Draenor expansion, to anybody that might be familiar with that. So first off, they have some new hooked items or NPCs, but those could function as gatherers for materials, so you just need to visit them occasionally and you can obtain the items they are collecting for you. I actually love that idea. It's just something passive that can get you materials. I honestly wouldn't even mind if there is a little bit of extra work on your part to get that, because of course, like, just getting materials for nothing isn't the most engaging thing. Even if I'm not the biggest fan of grind, you still, I think, should have to do something to get a reward. You don't get something for nothing. And then reading the next sentence here, they expect this will need a hefty side of control to ensure that it does not become abused. And the first thing I think of is alts and people with alt armies and like a whole bunch of different accounts, because you can just make free-to-play accounts. I could definitely see some limitations needing to be implemented based on that to prevent it being abused. But I hope they do it in a way, like, this is one of the concerns I have, is that they will limit the system based on it being abused instead of like preventing it from being abused. The system itself is designed around expecting people to abuse it. So I really hope that is not the case, and they're more so working on preventative measures rather than just limiting the design scope of the system, because to me it's a really exciting start, at least what they have here in this paragraph. It could be something I could see potentially needing to be VIP for it to work, maybe even some level requirements for certain tier materials. I don't know. There are a lot of different things they could do, and I'm just basically spitballing here. But anyway, yes, they want recipes to make objects for home and hearth. That's actually what I was expecting this whole section to be on, was just like, hey, you can craft housing items. So yeah, that does look like they are going to continue doing that. And then finally, we have events. So this is an idea that they have to enhance the crafting system, is events that rotate and move from place to place in support of different professions. So they could have like a logging contest at different lumber camps. There's a pretty fun one in Irigium, but I think it's overrun by enemies. There are other logging camps, by the way, but that's just like... first one that comes to mind for me is actually Irigium. I know there are some friendly ones though. Anyway, cooking competitions in Shire or Bree. I'd also be interested to see cooking in other regions. I don't know, I'm curious what the people in Forakel cook. That is really what I'm getting at. Scholarly activities, and then metalworking and so on. Yeah, I think that could be interesting, having events and rotating events that support certain crafting professions. One of the concerns I have, and actually this has to do partially with the rewards that they have here, is limited events in LOTRO I don't think have been greatly implemented in the past, at least with like rewards that actually impact your character progression. One easy example is Ill Omens, which I think if y'all have not seen my previous comments on it, I think it is actually actively bad for LOTRO. Even if it is something that I don't personally run into all that much or even care all that much for, it's just one of those things that makes me less and less interested in LOTRO endgame than I otherwise would be. And it's basically because of how powerful rewards you can get for just a limited time event that's exclusive to that event, and otherwise you have absolutely no alternative. That would be one of my concerns with crafting. But if it's rotating and regularly rotates, where you can keep on getting these things and it's not really that big of a deal like missing out on one of these events or even a few of these events, then you know that might be okay. It also depends on what the actual recipes, items, titles, and crafting advancements that you can get in the events. One of the things that I would lean towards is maybe, yeah, titles, you know, items might not necessarily be bad, getting like crafting resources and even crafting advancement. I think having events where you can boost your crafting a little bit more rapidly than outside the event, I think those are all great things. But you know, where I'm really leaning towards having concern is what the unique recipes would look like. But still, I think the general idea here with the events could definitely be exciting. And now that we're in closing here, again, I do want your all's feedback on videos like this if you like to see them and all that sort of stuff, because I have had not many videos like this, partially because just like reviewing a developer post like this, there haven't been that many in the past until recently when I've had these sort of newer style videos. And just as Orion is looking forward to hearing from you, I am also looking forward to hearing from you, so please comment your thoughts. I'm really curious what people think of crafting, because outside of rants and complaints, really, I haven't talked all too much about it in past videos at least. Anyway, if you did enjoy, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching everyone.